morning we have seen the variable types and the data types which are being used in PHP, and we have seen the scalar types. Now let's look at the structure type. The first one in the structure type is the arrays. Arrays, as I was discussing in the morning session, array is nothing but it's a structured collection of key value pairs. Now key in the morning example that I've shown was the numerical key. So if I rerun the same application again that was shown in the morning session, you will notice that it is trying to show you two things. One is the index number, which is the key, and the other was the actual value that was assigned. So we have a key here and a value. So it just means to say that the key goes to value. For example, the key 0 goes to the value. So this key also called as index in the other programming language. We basically treat it like a key. So let me come back to the subject now. So when it comes to the PHP, now PHP supports something called as the associative array. What's the meaning of saying associative is it associates a key with a value. So that is what is the meaning of it. So if you look at this particular example that was done during the morning session, this key is associated with a value. That's the meaning. That's why it is called as the association. Whereas in your other programming language, we don't have that kind of association. We don't treat the index as a key. Whereas here, you can think of using it. If you are using a key and value pair, you must see to it that the keys are unique. So that means to say that the key value cannot repeat, or in other words, the index cannot be repeated. Okay. And also, I've told you in the last class, the values, when we think of using an array, values can be anything. It could be, a value could be an array by itself. Okay. The next one is, when we think of using the PHP, arrays are dynamic. You don't resize the array. You don't need to specify the boundary or the length of the array. The array size automatically grows as and when it is required. So let me say, in one way it is good, in other way it is bad, because you really don't know what's the size of the array. So let's look at an example over here. What is created in this example is we have a array with 3 values. So the first value is stored at the index 0 of the given array, and the second one will be on the other, and the third as usual. In the second example that is being shown here, we have the key that points to the value. So we have key as 1 and the value is the numerical value. So how do I access this particular element? How to access this element is you say index. Whereas if you want to access a associative array, you just specify the key here. So this, you specify the key and you specify the key here, and you will be able to access it. So this greater than, equal, greater than, it means it is pointing to, this key is pointing to a given value. Okay? If the keys are not supplied, it is assumed that you want to go for a numerical indexing, and the index always starts with the 0, like the other programming language. Now the next one is, I think I've already talked about it. You can have one of the value as an array itself. So if you look at this example over here, one key is pointing to a array. So if you say ARR of other, it's actually a array altogether. In that case, how do I get, if ARR of other is an array, how do I get this first element? Same thing, you just write ARR of other and then start giving the indexes of the inner array. which is there inside it. So if you say ARR of other, which is pointing to an array, and if you want the first element, again you put it in the bracket, square bracket, and specify the index. If it had a key, then you specify the key instead of the index. I'm not going to go in depth into the array, how to create an array and how to declare an array and what are the different functions, built-in functions which are available in the array. I will talk about it in the other session again. Now let's look at the third type, and we have seen the when we talk about the data types, we've seen scalar type, which is a scalar type could be an integer, it could be a float, it could be a string, it could be a boolean. Whereas when it comes to a structure type could be a array, and the other one is the object. Again, I'm going to talk about this object slightly in the object-oriented sessions. Not as of now, I'm not going to confuse you with the how to create an object, because it's going to be slightly different from the syntax, are slightly different from the other programming language that we have studied. Let's look at the other data type, that is the special data type, and that is the null. So null means it's the absence of the value or the absence of data type. Whenever you create a variable and when you don't declare a value to a variable, it's assumed that it's a null. It does not contain anything. Okay. However, you can exclusively specify a value called as null to a given variable. This null is case insensitive. But usually capital null is being used up, but that is not case sensitive. You can type it any way you want it to assign it as a null. Okay, so the object oriented, how to create an object and how to use it, I'm going to talk about slightly later. The last type is the resource. Now resource type or a resource data type is something that holds a resource. It could be a reference to a file that is open, it could be a connection to a database, or it could be any other type of resources which are there within the server, or through which you can access some other resources. Now let's look at the scope of the variable. Now scope of the variable, as you are already familiar from the other programming language, scope refers to where is it available, how long it can survive, or which part of the program I can use it. Now whenever you create a variable in PHP, they are assumed to be available everywhere except within a function, which is slightly different from the other programming language. Let me demonstrate it with a simple example. Now I have a function here. I'm going to just create a function again. Here. The way in which you declare a function is not different from the other programming language. Usually you have a keyword called as function. You specify name of the function. You specify the parameter. If at all you are supplying a parameter. If you don't want to supply a parameter, there is a no hard and fast rule that you are supposed to supply it. But something is different from the other programming language, and that is there is no return time. Okay. Why there is no return time? Because you know very well the type is automatically implied by the PHP. So I don't have to say that this is going to return int, this is going to return float and other things, because the type is automatically, whatever it returns, the types are being used up. So I'm not returning anything back. Now suppose if I want to make a calculation, this is not going to be a terrible thing. So you know very well that if at all you want to do a calculation, this is how you perform a calculation. These two are the input values for your function, or whatever you say, argument or the parameters for your function that is using it. If you want to return it, so it's not going to be something different from the other programming language. So you are going to return the sum here, and that's simple as that. So you created a function. Now how do I use this function? I'm going to just go to this echo statement, and I'm going to say not $add, because it's a function. I'm going to say add say 4,5, and I'm going to put a semicolon here, and that's the end of it. So you have a function that is created, and if you the answer is very obvious one. Let's get this one. So you get to see the answer. As simple as that. Now there are a few problems with the scope of the variable. You are already familiar the meaning of saying a local variable or a local scope. Local scope is a scope that is available within the flower bracket. And you are very obvious thing, if you try to echo out the value of x, you know very well this is not going to work out. Even after this line, even if you try to do it, it's not going to touch you anything. I'm going to just save it and just to prove that it's really true. And this press F5 here, and you just got the error message saying that undefined variable x, because the x is available only within this function, only within this flower bracket. So the scope ends when the function ends. What about the other familiar thing that you are using in your C programming language? So I have a var, which is going to be variable outside the function. Is this available inside my function? So I'm going to say var, and I'm going to just use it. I will get rid of it. So in my case, the answer, if I run it, answer must be 4 plus 5, which is 9, plus 10, which must be 19. So let's say what is the expected answer if you try to run it. And you notice that the expected answer is still 9, and you get an error saying that this var is not declared. So I'm trying to use this var, and it just says that var is not available inside the given function. That means the scope of this var, even though in your C programming language, when you declare anything outside the function, they are globally available inside any function. It is not true in PHP. In PHP, the function automatically, the variable automatically will not be used up. And the NetBeans itself says that it seems to me that you are trying to use a var which is not declared or which is not initialized, and you try to use that value. Then that's one major difference. Suppose if you really want to get that var inside your function, then you have to use a declaration called as global, and then specify what. So what's the meaning of saying here is, if you notice over here, the minute you click on a variable, the NetBeans is intelligent enough to point out, it will highlight where are this variable available. So when I put it here, I will just pull this out, and you notice something. It's same thing. When I keep my cursor, you notice that it is highlighting only var here, but it is not highlighting this var. That means to say that the NetBeans is actually prompting you, and it is saying to you that that variable is not the same variable as the one that is outside this function. They are two different variables. The minute I declare this one, you notice that it just starts highlighting. If I put anywhere, it just highlights and says that this is the one. If I put the click the cursor on this X, it will highlight and say where is the scope. Now here you notice that it is now in the scope. So that global just tells the parser that use the global var. Do not think that this is a local variable. Go and get the global variable and start using it. Now you may say that why did they do that thing? Sometimes it is a bit confusing when you write a program, and sometimes unknowingly you may start overriding the global values within your function. So when you write a C program, it may so happen that if you write a lengthy code, it may so happen that instead of using a local variable as I or X or something, you may be unknowingly you may change the global variable altogether, because its a scope is available within the function. So you see that works. So they avoided it, and then they said that if your intention is to use the global, then let us know. So this is to tell the parser that I really want to use that global one. I'm not using my local one. Okay. So this is one extra step, but it helps in some of the situations, and that's why they went ahead with it. So this is the global, and you know very well there is something called as the static. So let's look at the other one. You are already familiar with this word static. You are already familiar. So let me say increment, and I'm going to say a is equal to 10. And don't be surprised to see this operator. So this is not something which is an alien operator to you. So let me call this function once. So how do I call this function? I'm not going to start with the, remember when the function is called, you don't start with the dollar symbol. It's like the function call that you have, increment. Let me repeat it maybe 2 to 3 times. So let's see what is going to happen. So I have this increment and I'm trying to call this increment many times, and this increment takes a, well, let me say just 0 or anything. A is assigned a value 0 and a plus plus must be 1 plus 0, which is 1. So if I call it many times, what it is going to happen? So if I try to call this one many times, and if I run this one, it's going to be 1, 1, 1 all times. So I have not put the break here. So it's actually coming in 1, 1 line, but this one, when 0, when it is calling for the first time, a is 0 plus 1, this is plus plus will be 1. Next time, again it starts a is 0 plus plus means 0 plus 1, it is 1. Again, the same thing. What will happen if I make it as what is your expectation on this is so if I try to refresh it, you're going to get it. You are all familiar with that idea. Whenever you declare something as a static, you just mean to say that it's a local variable, but you are asking the parser to retain its value for the next call. So when this function is called for the first time, it creates a local variable a. Because it is a static, even after the completion of this function, the value of a will be retained. And what is the value of the a when the first function is called? So it initializes it with the 0, then it increments, so the return value will be so the return value will be 1. So this is for the first time. Next time you call the increment, a will retain the last value, which is 1. It's not going to reinitialize it with the 0 because it is a static. It will retain that value. 1 plus 1 will be 2 and the return value will be 2. Third time when it is trying to call, a has already retained the last value, which is 2, and it increments it by 1, making it as 3. So static means retain the value for the subsequent call, and this is not a thing which is different from the other programming language. So what is different here is with respect to the scope. So the scope is if you create a variable, the variable will be available everywhere but not inside the function. That's a very strange thing, but it is good. Okay. And if the variable is local within the function, automatically it will not be available outside the function. So it is obvious as that. And if you are using the static will allow you to retain the value. So slight different one. I think I've already shown you the example of getting a global variable inside a function. Then this is a very strange thing. You can actually create a function. You can dynamically start creating a variable. So let's look at this in action. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get rid of all these things. Really fun. Let me say x is, I'm going to use a string here. So this is a, okay. So I have a variable x here whose value is hello, and I'm going to create a variable itself called as hello. So remember, this is a variable. This is the value that is stored in x, and this one is a variable by itself. And I'm going to use the first. Let's say the individual value. So this is x dot. I'm going to use the br just to get a line break, and then hello to get the value. And you can expect there is this is a child array, so it's not going to be something which is too terrible. So the first one is the hello, and the next one contains Amit inside. Now let's look at a string thing. I'm going to concatenate here with the break so that I get it in the other way. So let's do this way. So I'm going to say dollar of x. So I'm asking it, okay, dollar of x you know very well, it's hello. Dollar of x is hello. Now I'm saying again the dollar of that. So what are we going to get in this case? So let's go ahead and let me refresh it. You notice that it's not saying dollar of x was hello, and if you expect that it's going to print dollar hello, it is wrong. So at this point, what has happened is when this part was executed, it just said that this is dollar of x is nothing but hello. That's the, so you can notice over here, dollar of x was the hello. And then I said one more dollar for this. I'm now again adding one more dollar. Now what's the meaning of this is I'm saying that okay, this is what is I want you to interpret. So what it is started interpreting is it then started interpreting dollar of hello. So what is dollar of hello in this case? So dollar of hello in this case was the image, and that's why it now said this is. So when you input the dollar of dollar. So how long can you do it? So the next one is, can you keep on doing like this, or is there a limit on it? So let's go ahead. Let's say I'm going to say dollar n equal to mangle. So what will happen if I say dollar of dollar of dollar? 3 times the dollar. What is it going to print? Where is the? Okay. So I will just refresh it, and it's not taking my refresh. And you can guess when it will be produced. So start interpreting here. So this is a strange behavior that you see in PHP. So it just goes on interpreting. Now you can also do it in the other way around. The other way around is you can actually introduce a flower bracket inside here to confuse the rest of the world. I'm going to use the 2 only. That it is the first I want you to interpret a dollar and then this one. Then if I try to do it, remember I have removed $1 from there just to avoid the confusion. And going back to the previous one, I removed $1 there. So it must be the first part is exclusively you are saying that evaluate within the flower bracket, evaluate the expression first, then go back and evaluate the other one. So this is a slightly complicated one, but you can, in some scenarios, you can think of using it. If you notice over here, I have str1 which is test. Test is ABC. So dollar of str1 has to output the ABC. Okay. There is one other example that over here. So dollar $a is hello, dollar $a is what? Now this is not shown again. I'm not going to type it again. Now, what is the variable that is created here? What's the variable on which the values are used? Now, the variable that is created here is dollar hello. So if you carefully observe, so this is dollar $a is hello. So this part will be replaced by the hello. So what it's going to ultimately do is it's going to create hello equal to going to put the hello there, and then it will consider it as the next variable. Kind of a complicated thing, but get the next one is the predefined variable. Whenever we think of using the PHP, there are many variables which are too helpful for us in our programming. First of all, some of them is when we try to run a PHP code, if you want to know which operating system on which this is running. So suppose if it is a Windows, you want to create it, run a separate module, or if it's a Unix, you want to run something else and so on. So you can just ask the PHP, tell me which is the operating system that it is running. Or you can even ask the PHP, okay, what was the input that was sent by the user, and give me all the input. So these are built-in variables, and most of them are actually arrays that are provided to you directly so that you can use it. They are called as globals, and they are also called as super globals in some cases. Sometimes they are called as auto globals because they are automatically instantiated. Now these super globals are usually written in all caps and usually starting with the underscore. That's why I told you not to put the underscore in the beginning, because PHP itself is using them. These are available everywhere. Whether inside a function, outside the function, anywhere you go, they are available. That's why they are called super global. And most of the time, we use them to get some information on the environment in which the PHP is running, or to get some user input and the other one. Okay, there are many are available. I will not explain each and every one of them. The one that you have already seen is this one. You have seen today lab. You'll see how to use this session. One other variable that holds the session values. Now, some of the examples that you can think of using. If who is assigned a value true, and you can start comparing it with the equal operator. And if the variable is a Boolean type, like all the other programming language, there is no need to do the comparison like this one. Sometimes people really use this one. It's not really required. If the show separator is a Boolean value, you can just use that itself in the condition. There is no need for you to put one more equality sign, because even after the comparison, the answer will be either true or false. Suppose if this is a Boolean variable, the value inside it is either true or false. There is no need to make a comparison again with one more constant, and that is a Boolean value, because either the answer of this will be, after comparison, the answer of this will be either true or false. If what is stored inside this variable is true, it's going to return a value to itself. If what is stored inside this variable is a false, this is going to return a value false. That means whatever value that is stored inside this, that itself will be the ultimate answer of this expression. So there is no need for you to put extra load on the parser in asking it to evaluate it. Instead of this, you can just tell the parser, go and look at the value of the show operator. If it is true, the if condition is true. If it is false, the if condition is false. So this will give you some performance boost when you try to run the program. Okay. I think I've already talked about this one. One is get type, set type, and the other one that you have already seen is the is set. I think you already seen this one. In your lab, is set is used to verify whether the value is set. Okay. So let's look at this one. If you're not able to recall it, I'm going to very quickly do that thing. So I'm going to go over here. I think I will retain this value. Now I can ask the question whether the value is set or not. I'm going to say echo is set $x. So what's the meaning of this one is I'm just asking is the value x set. I'm going to go over here, echo is set $y, which is not there, which is not declared. So then I'm going to run this particular program, see what's the effect of this one. I will just refresh it. So you notice that right at the beginning it just said this one is 1. What about the other one? Other one is actually false. So if you really want to know it, I will just put it inside the if statement to get an error message. So A, if is set, I'm going to say y is set. Else I'm going to say echo y is not set. I'll take it to the next line. So if value of y is set, I'm going to print the value is set. Otherwise, I'm going to say it is not set. So simple as that. Press F5. And there is no break there. I have not put the line break, but you get the answer. Y is not set. Now, I have set the value here, and is set is true. I can do here unset. I don't have to explain what is the meaning of that. The word meaning itself is the same thing. Now I'm asking the question, okay, I set the value. You know very well the value of x is set. After this I'm saying that unset the value. Pull out the value of x, as simple as that. And now if I remember, I think I will go here and change this word as x here, because now it's not the y that I'm trying to verify. Do here and do the same thing. Save it, come back, and then F5. It's not taking F5, same thing, but you notice that y is not set because I have unset it. The word itself says you set the value, you unset it. Simple as that. Again, I can check the data type of the given values. For example, I will just pull this out. Value of x is set. I can check what is the data type of x. It's also possible. For example, I can say echo is underscore string. Is I have int file and other things. String. String. So all the others are there. Is string of x. So I'm just asking it, is the value of x is string. Okay. Similarly, you have is int, is float, and other things. Like when you try to do some manipulation on it, if you really want to know what's the data type of it, is it actually a number that you want to increment, or is this something else? You can use the is underscore. Is followed by many things. Is underscore, and you have everything. Is object, is boolean, but the meaning is one and the same. And if you really want to know the full detail, I'm not going to go into it. The NetBeans itself will tell you what is it all about. Okay. So is followed by, this is a function that will help you to get the values. So if I try to run this one, because it's a string, I have to get the value as 1. You notice there the second one, the first one is set, that is 1. The second one is for is string. It's a true is 1, false is nothing. So echo will not display anything if it is a false. If it is true, it's going to just display 1. So 1 means to say that it is being set. Okay, so these are the things which are there. There is one more, I think, int val, which will give you the integer value of the given one. I think you are already familiar with this kind of function. There is one other function. Suppose whenever you are working on the PHP, if you really want to know what is the environment in which PHP is working, you can go for PHP info. So this is one other function. Let me go to the source here. If you echo this one, you're going to get a beautiful tabular column that shows everything. So I'm going to say echo PHP info. This is a function That is very useful if you really want to know the entire capability of PHP and all the environment variables which are available. If you try to run it, it's going to give you a very lengthy, detailed information about the entire set, what is available. So if you notice over here, it's going to give you the full details of saying that on which machine it is working, the build date, the compiler, and so on. So you have all the details, which version you are using, what is available, and what is the configuration API, and so on. Okay, the full thing, and I told you the super globals which are used to get the environment. If you want to know what is the home directory, so like SQL home, if you want to know the PHP and so on. Every information will be available to you. This will be helpful for you to just get the actual environment in which things are working and header information and so on. This is going to be, if you notice over here, this is going to be a very lengthy listing here, and if you notice, this is going to be a very lengthy. You get the full details. So let's go ahead and let's go to the next one. And that is constant. Like in other programming language, we have the variables whose values vary, and we have constants whose values does not vary. So how do you declare a constant? You use the function define. Define and use it. So what's the difference between a variable and a constant? The value of the constant cannot be changed. As simple as that. So how do I declare a constant? You know very how to declare a variable. So we use define define. Let's say the most obvious one is 3.1415. So what I have done is I have declared a variable constant called as pi, and by convention all the constants are usually written in capitals. That is a convention, it's not a rule. What if you are writing it in the small case? Maybe you are the only one on earth who is trying to do that thing. If you try to create a constant in all lowercase, let's say too many chances are there that other developers who are going to test your program or others who are going to modify or debug your code will end up in a big trouble because they expect the constant to be in capitals. So whenever you declare a constant, always it is that you as a convention declare it in all caps. Whenever you declare a variable, do not put all caps unless and otherwise it is something which makes other thing twice before using it. Something like a global variable or something. When they start typing it, they feel that is something fishy about it. Something is wrong with this particular variable. Then they will be a bit cautious. Otherwise, for any ordinary variable, use either Pascal casing or camel casing, depending upon who is paying you. So, how do I get the output of this? Now, this is a constant. I then don't have to do this one. And you notice at the minute I type it, the NetBeans itself is trying to show me the value as well as it is trying to put a separate symbol saying that that's the constant. Okay. So you can expect what is going to come if you try to run this one. And it's going to display. So what's the difference between a constant and a variable? Constant's values does not change. You don't declare a constant by just putting a dollar symbol, and when you are using the constant in the expression, there is no need for having a dollar. So, slight difference between these two things. I am not using dollar anywhere during the declaration and during the usage. Let me go back to the other one. Okay, here is one constant, and there's no need to do that. One other thing, you cannot use it in the calculation. For example, let me try this one before I go to that slide. You cannot try to do this. I'm not going to run this one. get a beautiful error saying that the NetBeans itself will tell you that this is an error. Okay, I cannot try to this one. So it says that it's not a it's a function that you are trying to use, and you cannot implement it, nor you can assign a new value to this one. You can say 3.1415 and something. It's not. It's constant. Once declared, it remains constant within your program, unless and otherwise it goes out of scope and somebody else makes some changes. Let's go back to this one. So we have two here, and with all capitals something, and it's allowed. It's a identifier is same. Also, the other one. Again, I told you, do not start with the underscore because even though it's a valid one, you will end up in trouble some other time. The one that you have already seen is the echo. Identical to echo, you have a print function and the print r which will print the values. I'm going to very quickly go through this one because there is no fun in explaining this right from the beginning. These are the arithmetic operator. If you are not very sure, go to high school and learn about them. And these are the assignment operator. You have the same thing: plus equal to, minus equal to, star equal to, and there is one more. I think I missed that one more thing. And the one more that you can think of using is this dot equal. Remember, dot is a concatenation operator. So you are saying if you want to concatenate a string with the other string, say var equal to, it's like suppose say you have a variable here, $var, and you want to do this. $var is equal to $var plus $x. Isn't that their types? Everything is same. You can just say $var dot equal to $x. It's the same as the previous one. Just concatenation operator. How the other operators are working. And again, if you're not very sure, this is the modulo operator, which will give you the remainder. I'm not going to try and show you what is it all about. I think I have it here. So this means dollar equal to means dot equal to means $a equal to dot this concatenation. I think use the plus. I'm used to that plus because most of the other programming language uses that plus. These are the comparison operator, and we don't have something new about it. However, there is one other comparison operator which was not there in the other programming language, and that is the triple equal. So this was something that is different from the comparison. Again, we have two not equal is also there. That is identical. What's the difference? So let's go over here and let's see what's the difference. Let me create a variable here. $x equal to 10 and $y equal to 10. Now you know very well that they are not of the same kind. One is string, other one is an integer. Now, if I run this one and if I ask the parser, okay, tell me whether double equal to, which you are already familiar, if they are equal, come on, come to the other side. Echo they are equal. Okay, if they are equal, I'm just asking it. This is a statement. Let me go over here. And in order to save some time, I will not format and everything. And you notice that even though the data types are different, the values are same, and you know very well whenever the PHP goes in between and just start interpreting, even though the y is a string, it goes into that string and just finds out, okay, this must be equal because 10 is there. In fact, the string 10 is there. Now, sometimes you may not like this kind of comparison. In this case, you will go and say, not this. You will go and say that if they are identical, that means both of them are integer and their values are same, then only tell me they are equal. Otherwise, I want you to show that they are not identical. Now, what's the meaning of saying they are not identical is that there is a, like, you are trying to compare a string with a integer and you are trying to give an answer. The data type is very different, so don't give me an answer saying that they are equal. So that is triple equal, and that's what you're going to get it if you try to run it, and your answer is a very expected one. The triple equal is for that. So that is something different in PHP, which is not there in the other programming language. And identical to this, you have one more, that is not double equal. So just this means single not equal, you know very well. This is a direct comparison. Not double equal means to say that if their values are identical, if the string is the side, string on the other side, then those strings are not equal. Tell me. If one is integer, other one is a string, and then don't start comparing and say that they are not equal or whatever. So that is comparison here. So 10 equal to 10 will be true, because even if it is a string, and if you really want to make a comparison, you have to do what is. And the other one is an obvious one. I'm not going to give you an explanation on it on the machine. Now, when you assign a value to a variable, it actually returns a value that was assigned to it. So, if you just look at ignore the other part, when you assign 7 to this variable, it actually returns a value that was assigned. So, when I say c equal to 7, it returns what was assigned. Now, you can use that vulnerability for initializing more than one variable. So what is being done over here is, when I assign 7 to C, it assigns it to C. Because it returns it back, I assign it back to B, and I assign it back to A. So what is the ultimate result is, all the variables are automatically initialized to the value 7. So first 7 is assigned to C, then the value of C comes to the B, value of B comes to A, and all of them will be initialized to 7. These are an obvious one, and double ampersand and double pipe symbol, or and the exclamation mark, not. There are others which are usually being used, and sometimes people use the word, small case word, and or, which means the same thing. There is nothing different in both. Okay. The other one is the reference type. That, in order to get that, we are already familiar with the what's the meaning of saying reference type. So instead of assigning the value like co-equal to bar, you are just saying that bar equal to the reference of. You might have seen it in your C programming language, and somebody might have told you that this is how you create pointers and so on and so forth. We don't have a notion of pointers, fortunately, in PHP, and this just means to say that both of them are pointing to the value of or same value. Both are pointing to the same value. In your C programming language, when somebody tries to write this one, it means that it's an address of who? Because that kind of thing. Now, this is different. You are getting the value of it.